Hi, dearie. So, since you're out, I thought I would give you a little bit of the lore of Path of Exile here. So, let's get going. The Challenge League right now has been going for a few weeks, and it's called Blight. And I have played about 2 levels of it so far, so I don't know much about it yet. Should be fun.
Why do the keen of mind seek to satiate their curiosity in darkness and depravity? Innocence is our father. Ariath is our mother. When a daughter strays from the light, she makes herself an orphan. Learn well the lessons that Rayclass will teach you, witch. It is your only hope of finding your way home.
So, funny story, this is actually a different introduction than they had in earlier versions of Path of Exile before Act 5 came out. Originally, it had the witch talking about how, she had some villagers try to burn her at the stake, so she, took their children. No further details. Kind of concerning. Regardless, in Path of Exile, we always begin with the characters being thrown unceremoniously off a ship to, find their own way through the horrible, monster-haunted, undead wilderness. In a lot of ways, Path of Exile takes place in Australia and New Zealand in a fantasy world, so essentially, you have been marooned in horrifying fantasy Australia, and everything wants to kill you.
The very sand shivers with malice. There's a power here that welcomes me.
I love the witch, by the way. She's my favorite.
You and I, we're the only ones that made it to shore. Alive, anyway. Looks like you found something you can defend yourself with. Good. This place is crawling with criminals. There's smoke rising just east of here. Could be worth checking if there's...
It's a pretty good introduction, isn't it?
The dead will soon rise for me, not against me.
We do always get our first weapon and our first, spell right there, which is always handy. And it does seem to be, let's see, bits of line or squid. Not quite sure what the texture is here this time. I've seen pictures, although I'm not sure if it's still around, of a version of this map where it's a lot of more dead bodies washed up on the shore. They do change things around periodically. Some of the monsters that used to appear in certain places occur in different ones now. The Twilight Strand is basically a tutorial, though, so it's always reasonably similar. And this is a support gem, so I have this fireball here, which lets me throw fireballs at things. Very exciting. And this support spell basically makes it do some more damage when I'm casting it enough times. Does a few other things too, but I probably won't be sticking with that for too long because I'm sticking with a build that I know and like, so I kind of know what supports I'm likely to go for in the long term.
I need more
But
mana.
on the other hand, like, how often am I actually gaming lately, so we'll see how long this goes. Check out this starfish. Looks like it's got eyes on it. Maybe that's just me. Kind of like the idea that it's a Lovecraftian one, though. I also appreciate that the bottoms of her feet are terrible now. I think that might be a new thing, although honestly, like, if I weren't in the very first level, my character would be wearing shoes, so maybe that's just me. Anyway, this is Hillock. He is a horrible monstrosity. And yes, he was like this in life, too. The understanding I have is that he was a, mentally disabled, horrible monster
And I
man
thought I'd be a
in
dead
life.
woman by now.
And he will be showing up later, entertainingly. In this case, he's undead, but he does end up coming back later. You can also see the texture here. Seems to show that he's probably been in the water for some time. And he got stabbed quite a lot. If I recall correctly, he got killed not by being pushed off of one of these, Exile boats, but by being stabbed a whole bunch of times and thrown into the ocean, and he just happened to wash up here, as most people apparently do. More on him later. And I'm not bothering to kill everything because honestly, it's more useful to move through things relatively quickly and get your levels in. Although that is a creepy darn body, ain't it? Alright.
You got the big bastard.
He said, ha, got the big bastard. If you didn't hear. You can see here all of the corpses in town have been, not just horribly killed, possibly twice, but, weighted down with metal chains, which have to be in pretty short supply, honestly. And I think the implication is that if they do decide to come back from the dead, which you may have gathered is a thing here in, Fantasy Australia, they'll be stuck at the bottom of the ocean. One of the smaller things. I also kind of assume that this cart may be what they use to, move the bodies around. So here we have the Letters of Exile, and this is one of the more fun lore elements. I'm not going to go through it exhaustively because it's a random number generator, but you can see they're all signed by Dominus, and that is the theocratic emperor at the moment of Oriath, which is where we come from.
Maitland of Theopolis, you have transgressed against your god and your fellow man. You have been a willing vessel for the following sins. Disciplinary sloth. 1 count of negligence leading to bodily harm. 1 count of negligence leading to financial harm. God has charged me with your redemption. You are hereby exiled to Rayclast, where it is hoped you shall come to repent your sins and make your peace with your beloved father.
So briefly, they're all in this general style, and that's why I'm not going to go through with all of them, because they repeat quite a bit, but, there's a lot of crimes. There's everything from horrible repeated murder to insulting a priest, and pretty much everything in between. So, it's made very clear right from the beginning that Theopolis and Oriath, where we've been exiled from, not a nice, not a just place. Although, it's also pretty clearly... The witch is evil. She's evil. There's more variance in some of the other characters. I think the Marauder is fairly sympathetic in particular because he's an ex-slave, and has been seeking his freedom. There's another Karui character who are Maori XPs who is in a similar boat. And the ranger, who's also a lesbian, as I may have mentioned, she got exiled for poaching. So there's a range of moral and class aspects going on there. And it does seem like these stakes, they're either being used for defense or they're being used for these torches. I'm not quite sure which. Let's see if we can... Oh, yeah. Yeah, these are siege defenses, so... I'm not sure if they were very afraid of Hillock getting in, but I feel like he could have battered his way through the door. So I wonder if they are trying to put up barricades in case other things are trying to get in. Perhaps some of the faster monsters, because this is above head height. This wouldn't be very effective against, like, your standard zombie, especially if they were crawling around the ground. And especially because this door isn't really barricaded, and there's only one watch guy here. So from a lore standpoint, I would think these might be intended to keep out less friendly exiles and other humans. And they've clearly been working on making some more, although it's not like this camp is going to change while we're there. But you're going to see some human enemies pretty shortly out on the other side here who might make that theory more plausible. So here's town. This is the Act 1 town of 5. And then we do another loop back around where it's slightly different. They've been surviving on some fish. I think there's also a Roa around here somewhere, but you could see this guy's body is buzzing with flies, so he is in pretty terrible shape. This one also looks injured. Oops, don't really need that. Some more fish drying here. And if you move around, you can see that this is all ship detritus. It's stuff that they've been able to find washed up. They do have a fire going, but not many people are pointedly hanging out around it, which suggests it's not that cold, even though it is dark out, so it's probably summer, right? They've also updated some of the textures and stuff recently. You can see here, there's this poor lady who's got her baby in tow. I think she may have been breastfeeding in a earlier version, but that's obviously less clear now because she's wearing a shirt. But it's made clear from the very beginning that children and innocents are not spared here. So I think it does a good job of giving you a sense of Oriath's culture long before you ever see it. It's also made pretty clear that these guys are living in pretty absolute squalor, barely keeping the rain off of them. Low on food, low on supplies, low on everything. So, you're set up pretty much from the beginning as a very important figure in this act. I do wish you could have a little bit more direct influence on it, but it takes a little bit for that to happen. Alright, so let's go through the dialogue, and I'm going to be mostly quiet while we let that play.
I saw what you did to Hillock out there, witch. Your black art is the reason you're here, in exile. It may also be the only thing that allows you to see another dawn. I'm Nessa, and I suppose I should thank you for ridding us of that putrid giant. Back in Oriath, I judged your kind without hesitation. In Rayclast, I don't have that luxury. Lion Eye's watch isn't much, but it's ours. We could use you here, while you live. But should you wish to venture out, do just one thing for me. Out on the coast, amongst the wrecks, there must be a ship's medicine chest. I have many to care for, and there's only so much I can do with herbs and seawater.
So the number of people that we see here, is...
Goodbye.
maybe a dozen? Not even in camp? It's pretty strongly implied that there is a much larger community going on, but it's not really reflected right here. Nessa has been basically acting as the nurse for some time here, so a lot of her questing is very, humanitarian.
A wayfish, waterlogged witch, washed up in Rayclast. That's the first line of the poem I'm writing about you, Exile. Easy, girl. You could scorch a bloke with a look like that. The name's Bestel, captain of the good ship Merry Gull. At last, my Merry Gull is gone. My crew is gone. But my wits remain, after a fashion. There's an island, a hop, skip and a wade offshore of the terraces. That's where my Merry Gull ran aground. Watched the locals spit roast the ship's doctor, but his medicine chest might still be there, amongst the splinters and bones. It'd have everything Nessa might need. Dr. Shaky Hands Opton was lousy with a scalpel and even worse with a saw, but he knew his apothecary. Explains the shaky hands, if you ask me.
As a side note here, you can see that there's a pretty specific set of fonts that end up being used in this game. A lot of what I've been able to read is actually in Latin, and it's a little bit hard to translate, but this symbol here is a religious one. It's the religious symbol of innocence, the god worshipped in Theopolis and Oriath. So, this guy's gonna come up a lot. I am not sure what this one is, though. Or this one.
Fine work with Hillock. Where'd you learn to fight like that? No, forget I asked. We exiles have no history. Dominus took it from us when he had his blackguards dump us in the water out there. Here, got something for you. Should help you kill a few more of those undead bastards. No, don't bother thanking me. The way I figure it, the longer we fighters live, the longer everyone lives.
And I'm gonna go with Raised Zombie, as I usually do, because that is a darn useful skill for a witch. Since he's getting covered up, let's check out Tarkley's model here. It's actually been recently updated. And you can tell a lot by how mismatched everyone here is. Tarkley in particular, because he's clearly competent, but he still can't find a dang pair of boots that match. And he's clearly suffered some kind of injury to his face, either a temporary one or he's actually lost an eye, but he's managed to survive it somehow, which does suggest that Nessa is doing a pretty decent job with her medical stuff, because that's not the kind of injury you usually survive without antibiotics. Or maybe he's just lucky. People did live in the Civil War. Yeah, Tarkley. What are you doing, stretching out your bow like that? You're gonna
Still
hurt
alive,
the bowstring
are we?
in the rain.
Founded by Marseus Lioneye as a supply station for his campaigns against the Karui. In its day, Lioneye's watch could be defended by just a small garrison of well-armed legionnaires. What have I got? A handful of starving criminals with driftwood clubs and rusted hatchets. The Eternal Empire has some right nasty leftovers. Whether it's something in the air or in the water, no one stays dead in Rayclast. Not the first time. Can take a little while, but sooner or later corpses wake up and go looking for breakfast.
That zombie at the beginning freaked me out the first time I started playing this, by the way. Thankfully, I'm a little less skittish now.
That hat Bestel wears? Saw him pluck it from the real captain's head right before the cannibals barbecued the poor bastard. Waste not, want not, I suppose. Yes, Bestel's got a gift for telling tales, but I'd never call him a liar. The truth's always in there. You just have to listen for it. Nessa's the one keeps the rest of us from losing our minds. To be honest, when she first arrived, I didn't think she'd survive more than a day, 2 at most. She's been proving me wrong every dawn since. Heard a bard once sing that the fairest flowers bloom in the foulest places. He was bloody well right. I've seen many an exile pass through Lioneye's watch, and many more that simply pass on. Those letters are my way of keeping track, of remembering. Oriath might want to forget us all, but I'll be damned if I will.
I like Tarkley quite a bit. I don't think we ever do find out why he was exiled. We do know about
Farewell.
Bestel and Nessa, and neither of them are actually criminals, but I think it is strongly implied that Tarkley is of some sort or another.
What little help I can offer is yours.
That's a marauder in the background there, by the way. Love the tattoos.
Tarkley's as good a man as you can find on this god-forsaken coast. He has some wrongs to right, no doubt. What they are, I've never asked, and I never will. If not for Tarkley, we'd all be dead. The Merry Gull ran aground on the tidal island trying to escape from pirates. As tends to happen here in Rayclast, her crew met a far worse fate. Cannibals. Tarkley pulled Bestel from some hideaway in the wreckage. The ship's only survivor. Whether the ordeal fractured his mind or whether it was just in his nature all along, it's clear that Bestel sails a different course to the rest of us. While we live,
Poor Nessa. Not even a mother herself, and yet she cares for us all. And what a sickly, pathetic brood we are. May she live to have her own family, a real family. If anyone deserves that, Nessa does.
As a side note, you can see the difference in models here between Nessa and Vestal. Nessa's been updated, like Tarkly, relatively recently here, and Vestal is blurrier, messier, less, solid, because, he's definitely got one of the old models. I also haven't noticed this before,
Made
but,
any progress?
is that a wrapping? Yeah. Not sure what that wrapping around his wrist is. I don't think it is a tattoo, but it seems like a much more ornate thing than most folks have on them, especially because he's wearing just a tattered pair of pants. This is definitely a bandage, but I don't know, maybe it's improvised cloth? That seems likely.
Made any progress?
Tarkly rescued from the waves. A stricken Bestel, fate's slave. From fallen crew and broken bark, Bestel lives, thanks to Tarkly.
Arrol, the Merry Gull's cook, washed up on the rocks over yonder. Dead as a doornail he was, buried him myself. Then, a few days later, I see him on the beach. A little worse for wear, but upright, shuffling about. A land full of disturbing surprises, this Rayclast.
Alright, and I think that's all the oh, that's right. Navali doesn't normally show up in town quite yet. She actually is found about a third of the way through the act, maybe. But since I started playing just a little bit before I started recording here, she's in town now, so...
Hello.
Let me show you her. She's obviously of Karuian ethnicity too. Most of the darker skinned folks that you're gonna see are, because it's a very common ethnicity. So you can see her chin tattoos here, and on her torso. This little totem at the end of her staff is particularly interesting. I also find it pretty interesting that she's wearing pretty heavy furs, but not in a way that's really going to insulate her. So if this was the kind of clothing that she would have worn before, it may be a ceremonial outfit, since it doesn't seem to be entirely practical, although I don't think we know all that much about the cultural elements for her. Also check out that monkey. Isn't it a good monkey?
Welcome. Is it choice that carries you here, or is it fate? I see a need in you. A need to peer into your future. A need to follow the right path. But your future has already been cast, so open your mind and embrace it. Long ago, my people called me a Hatungo, a wise woman. Now they call me a revenant. But it is not my fate to return to the Mother of Death just yet. For now I stand with one foot in this world, and the other foot in the realm of the dead. I'm an inquirer of the living, and an interpreter of death. I sense you have questions. For a gift of silver, I will answer them. But you seek more than answers. Riches, power. These I can also provide, in a way. All you have to do is join me. Heed my words, but walk your path. The future is mine to tell, but yours to claim. It is time to fulfill your prophecy. I traveled here through death's darkened halls, walking the paths of the remembered. I am but a memory of the woman I was. A memory treasured and sustained by the Mother of Death. I awoke in the halls of death, with the life I once led little more than a dream half remembered. Yama the White, my furry companion, stood before me with the seeing stone he holds now. Both were given a hair of Hinekora's dark knowledge, but each serves a separate purpose. The seeing stone drags me deep into its core, where every instant into eternity is known all at once, like limitless rings on a tree trunk. Yama, like a torch in the mist, guides me back from the stone's infinite visions. Hinekora, my mother of death, is not the only god, Exile. The Karui are watched over by many. Namahu lends us fire, which illuminates the path. Tafor gives us the trees and birds that line the path, so that we may enjoy beauty and peace. Tukohama provides us with weapons and knowledge of war, which lets us walk the path safely. And in the final days of this world, Kitava, whose hunger knows no bounds, will take it all away. See you soon.
So, functionally in the game's terms, you can find silver coins which let you seek random prophecies, which will let you trigger certain events or gain certain items which can be useful. I think in terms of the cosmology here, Navali is more interesting. And her description of Karui cosmology is the first one that you encounter in the current game. It's worth noting that there's quite a few pantheons in this setting, and while the theocracy of Oriath is monotheistic, give or take, it is absolutely clear that all of these pantheons contain real gods and are real to a greater or lesser extent. It becomes clear later on that when enough people believe in a story about a hero or a lost figure, they may become a god and embody the story more than their lost humanity, and they tend to become monstrous as they continue to embody it. We haven't seen many of the gods that are more friendly yet.
I know that stench. Just like my sisters. Upon the pyre.
For instance, we haven't run into Hinekora in the game at all so far, unless things have changed dramatically since the last time I played. By the way, these waves are lovely. But we do run into Tukohama, and not in a particularly friendly light. There's really no side that's unambiguously in the right. They're all problematic to a greater or lesser degree. So let's equip that raise zombie spell, which yeah, we'll just pop this secondary wand on for now. These guys are my constant companions in my usual build. They do sometimes make noises, but not terribly often. And here you can see the various cannibal tribes that are
I need more mana.
right outside of Lion Eye's Watch, which makes the lack of pointy defenses on this side of the fortification interesting. It's never directly explained why their souls appear like that when they're killed, but I think it's implied that it's because they're huge jerks. They did engage in, all of this gross impalement. At least it's strongly implied that that's the case. And as you can see, most exiles don't live very long. I think... Oh, this is interesting. Alright, so knowing what I do about the game, this looks like it actually used to be a Karui longhouse. You can see the last remnants of a carving of a totem here. And it's in the right shape and location. So, the Karui and the Eternal Empire of Sarn used to be fighting over this area. That's why Lion Eye's Watch was created as fortification, because of the invading Karui who wanted to conquer the area. They're very much Polynesian Maori XPs and fairly warlike, but they did end up losing the war, and many of them were enslaved in the process by the current remnant of the Eternal Empire, which is the theocracy in Oriath. Sorry, gets a little complicated. This does not count as Crucified Man. I mean, kinda, but unless these bits got destroyed, like, after he died, he definitely got eaten by something. Possibly cannibals. Yeah, here's another remnant of a longhouse. So all of these structures aren't farmhouses like you might see in Diablo 3. They're mostly remnants of a Karui camp, which was here a little while ago. And sometimes we'll get that lag. Hopefully not for very long.
Khan's canoe struck this sand with the force of destiny. At his beck, the greatest war host in Karui history tamed the wild sea, their canoes coupling with the land one by one. Lion-eyed gemlings met us with shining metal and bold words. Hyri's arrows withered their pride, Khan's axes silenced their despair. Marseilles Lion-eye fought bravely to the last. Khan honored him with a place on his belt. Khan has shown Rayclast our Karui strength. Khan will teach Rayclast the Karui way.
So all of those figures are going to show up again. The gemlings in particular are pretty plot relevant because they also use these lovely gems that we are putting in our items, but they embedded them into their own bodies to give them superhuman abilities. This didn't always end well. I also think these spirals are interesting because they're clearly etched into the sand and not the stone, right? So it wouldn't make sense for them to be remnants of the old Karui settlement here. I think they're etched into the sand. Maybe they are in the stone. So either the cannibals are doing them, possibly in combination with their camping here, or else they're very old. I believe that the fall of Sarn and all of these tales of Marseilles Lion-eye were a couple hundred years before the present day of the setting. Ooh, that's a new crab. Shore crab. Ooh. Ooh, I like the spider crabs. We've got some new variety going on here.
To learn is to live.
So let's take a closer look at these guys. I always have liked that when you look closely at the cannibal models, it's fairly clear that they're not some kind of savage foreign tribe. They are clearly normal people that got caught up in something very terrible. It's also made pretty clear that eating people will make you sick, both on a magical, quasi-spiritual level and on a physical one. Some of them do exhibit signs of prion diseases, at least in some of the lore. And look, in a setting like this, you don't want to eat people. It's bad mojo. I think we're strong enough here to... Oh, well, there you go. Okay, fine. So you can see this bloody mouth, clearly eating people. It looks like there might be some tattooing, maybe ritual marking with blood going on. Oh, there's something there on that forehead. I think they have been updating these models. Nothing crazy. But you know this is a lore run. We're gonna be looking at stuff. Love the new crabs. These regular ripped up blankets, but with the selvage along here, also interesting to me, because with the setting, you assume they have to be sailcloth, right? She's a minor mini-boss, by the way. With the creepiest, murder soul. Yeah, I think these are cut into the stone, so they probably were set up by the Karui. So I wonder if the cannibals are setting up their campfires there because they think the spirals are good luck, or just because they have similar ideas about where good campsites would be. Could really be either. We don't ever really get to talk to the cannibals. We never see a friendly cannibal, but it's interesting. And you can see Karui forces had settled in for a pretty medium term, all up and down this coast, but all of their settlements fell quite some time ago. Yeah, this is clearly a bit of a boat rather than Karui remnants. So, here's the waypoint. In setting this is described as a bit of old magic from the Eternal Empire, although obviously they appear where it's gameplay convenient. They're pretty standard. I think we'll go through the title island real quick here and then wrap for now. So here you can see some Karui remnants that are in better shape. There's a lot of these statues, and since some of them are animated in places where the Karui gods are active, it seems to be implied that there's some kind of spirit. We haven't gotten to see a lot of the details yet, but they're usually pretty much in this style, almost always wooden, usually vaguely humanoid-ish, although this looks like it might be a bird. This also looks like maybe a bird, not quite clear. But you can definitely see the markers of non-white culture, for lack of a better word, pretty much everywhere. These are also pretty darn cool. I don't think it's ever explained what exactly they are. I think they might be whale skeletons. You do see them periodically laying around. And this is the title island, so although it never comes up in game, you can see that it's
I need more
daytime
mana.
now. And it seems to be implied that you can only get here at certain times of day. And the reason I say whale, partially because of these, which definitely look like whales. Quasi-hands, fins, however you want to call that. Also looks like the cannibals might have been eating seagulls. No real signs of injury on this guy, but we have seen a few of them dead on the beach. So either they've been getting sick and dropping like flies, very possible, especially if they're eating the horribly diseased Walking Dead, or cannibals. Which, given that this one is impaled on a spike, probably cannibals. Although I don't know how they got it all the way up there on that wing. It's never explained how the cannibals and the zombies coexist relatively peacefully. It's just gameplay. So here we've got another mini-boss. Special only in that he can cast 1 or 2 spells. Used to be much harder, actually. They've nerfed these two quite a bit. And here we have the medical chest. Dr. Shaky Hands Upton traveled with only the finest medicines and antidotes, and a curiously generous supply of opiates. Shaky
Too
Hands,
much
huh?
clutter.
Also pegs the setting, kind of implied to be Age of Discovery, maybe, which makes a lot of sense. A lot of stuff seems to be pegged around about 1700s, maybe 1800. And here we've got more of these Kadui symbols, so maybe this ship ended up washing up because of something going on with these symbols. Or maybe it's just high ground and that's also where that happened to be. This is never explained, but you can see some really interesting stuff in the background scenery in these games. Ooh, cutie pie. Coconut crabs are kind of new.
Calm has removed the eternal stain from this coast. The Empire's citizens decorate our meeting houses with their heads. Our warriors build homes for our families. Our families till the earth, fish the waters, fill the air with song. The Kadui way is yet a seedling here, but it grows, gains in pride and power every day. Calm has kept his promise. The time of the Kadui has come.
Alright, and I know from experience that's the last bit of lore in this little area, and we've got the quest item. So let's wrap here for right now. Although these water elementals, also always fun. One of the only monsters that can't be raised as zombies. But let's wrap that for right now.